So in continuing this repost, I also found another video I had done for the Halloween time of year. The year that it came out, there was actually 5 Fridays in that year. I like releasing my videos on Fridays, so I believe this year I was doing really good, and I did 5 videos for that month. So last month when I came to the conclusion that I was going to start uploading these older video pieces of content, I guess I kind of skipped this one, and it's been a couple of weeks, but now I'm remembering that I skipped it because I do want to break down a lot of the stuff that's in this video into actually more longer videos and talk a little bit more in depth about them separately. Just like the John Connor segment or the Superman segment. I want to do separate videos about a lot that's in here. But I do still like the video for what it is. And it's one of my first videos. It's one of my first 4 or 5 videos this was. I also really love that series that Shudder had, which also is about cursed films. And unfortunately, they have 2 seasons and I don't think they're going to have another one. So I like videos like this because I think it kind of opens up more dialogue about other movies that are kind of in this realm, I guess you can say, these cursed films that exist out there for one reason or another. Some of these might be a stretch, and a lot of it might have a little bit of an agree or disagree, and if you do have any opinions on it, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. Otherwise, enjoy the video.
You guys have heard of Shudder, right? I would definitely consider looking into it if you're a horror movie fan. It's a great service. It's basically the Netflix of horror films, but I'm not here to get into that. I bring it up because they have an original show on there called Cursed Films. Currently, it only has 5 episodes, and I watched it the other day. It's pretty good. It went through the basics: The Exorcist, Poltergeist, and The Omen. But it also spoke about the curse of the Twilight Zone film from 1983, which I didn't know was a thing, and there was also an episode about The Crow from 1994. I know the tragedy following The Crow, but I didn't know it was considered cursed. It was fun to learn more, so then I thought, what other films do they consider to be cursed? So, after some quick research, I came up with 10 films considered to be cursed you might not know about. I put this list together following 3 basic rules. Rule number 1, there are no horror films on this list. I know, it's Halloween season, and I wanted to keep my videos related to that for now, but even though there are plenty of apparent cursed horror films, there are also a lot of cursed films that aren't in the horror movie genre, and that's what I want to talk about here. Rule number 2, there are no limitations to the incidents which have occurred in order for them to be labeled cursed. There are so many reasons why the world would consider these films cursed, and categorizing them would be a bit unfair, so the reasons are going to vary. And rule number 3 is I tried to make it about films that I had never heard about before. I've had various conversations with other people regarding, say, The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby, and how those films are cursed, even the curse following The Wizard of Oz. So these are films I found so obscure that I had never actually spoken about it, and it is my assumption that most people don't. So there aren't many films that would be considered discussion pieces when it comes to talking about cursed films, if at all, but these are a couple that aren't involved in normal conversation about it to begin with. So first up, let's talk about The Dark Knight from 2008. As I said in my rules, most of the films on this list weren't going to be topics of discussion when it came to cursed films. It might be obvious about this one, but despite the tragic death that followed Heath Ledger before his role as the Joker would have skyrocketed his career, there are actually several more reasons why this film is considered cursed. Following the release of the film, Christian Bale had been brought into court following accusations of an assault. Also, Morgan Freeman was apparently in a car accident, let alone that during the filming, there was an accident with a special effects coordinator who died on set. And let's also not forget the shootings in Colorado during the release of the sequel, The Dark Knight Rises. Cursed might be considered a bit of an understatement for this one. I'm following that with the Terminator films, John Connor. This isn't necessarily the film in and of itself, but the character of John Connor apparently has a stigma attached to it which gives it the label of being cursed. Let's get into this really quick. Edward Furlong, the actor who pretty much introduced John Connor to us in a full-length film by playing the teenage version of the character in Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991, the film that is labeled the best in the series. Well, shortly after that film was released, he was put through a long fighting custody battle between his aunt and uncle, who had primary custody at the time, and his mother, who wanted custody back. Whether or not it was because he was going to be a successful actor at a young age, and had his whole career ahead of him, who knows? But due to the long longevity of this bout, which resulted in his mother winning, he had himself emancipated at 16 years old. That's a red flag if I've ever seen one. He had also been battling drug abuse for many years after the film, and though he had many other memorable roles, none really hit as hard as his success with Terminator. And it's not just him. Thomas Dekker, who played John Connor in the TV version of the Terminator, titled The Sarah Connor Chronicles. After its cancellation, after only being on the air for a year, he was arrested for hitting a cyclist and charged with a DUI. Christian Bale played John Connor in Terminator Salvation from 2009, to which a video of himself leaked on the internet and went viral of him going on a verbal rampage targeted towards the director of the film. And last but not least, Nick Stahl. He had a shining career from a young age, and what was considered to be his first feature film debut was Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, where he played, John Connor. Though probably not the biggest deal, but his career did sort of tank after the film. He only picked up minor roles in films like Sin City and a character on the HBO original series Carnival. He was quoted in an interview saying he wasn't even getting opportunities to read for roles. He had been arrested for not paying a cab driver. He was arrested for alleged possession of methamphetamine. He was arrested for committing a lewd act at an adult film store. There was even an incident back in 2012 where he was announced missing and later found to have checked himself into rehab. He took a small hiatus and came back to movies for a 2019 film, and who knows if this is his comeback or not. If you look at all these actors, the only one who could still be considered successful is Bale, and maybe that's because he has 2 cursed films under his belt. That's basic math. A negative plus a negative equals a positive. Everybody knows that. Next up, Superman. Talking about cursed characters, it would be shocking for most to learn that Superman is considered to be cursed, and the reasons why are not as simple as John Connor. George Reeves, who played Superman in the TV series The Adventures of Superman, which ran from 1952 to 1958, shortly after it was taken off air, Reeves committed suicide in 1959. Some say it's possible he was murdered, but nothing was ever proven. Christopher Reeve, as we know, suffered from a horrific horse accident after his role in 4 films as Superman, which left him paralyzed. Lee Quigley, who played the baby in the capsule in the Superman 1978 film, died in 1991 when he was only 14 years old. Some even say that the huge career plunge for actors like Dean Cain and Brandon Roth are part of the Superman curse, though nothing as tragic has followed them. As a small bonus to this, some say the tragedy of actress Margaret Kidder is connected to the Superman curse, since shortly after the last film, her bipolar disorder had begun to take hold of her and she fell out of stardom. The only one this hasn't seemed to affect yet is Henry Cavill, but let's not forget, the first film isn't called Superman, and perhaps the failure that was Batman vs. Superman could be considered in the long string of curses, but only time will tell. Let's also note the Superman that could have been with Nicolas Cage. Oh yeah, this was a thing. It was meant to be Tim Burton's vision of Superman, and it was dropped before filming could happen, but thankfully, we have these lovely images as part of the Superman history. Next up, Waterworld from 1995. So, some can argue this was the flop of the year when it was released. I only know a few people who, like myself, love it for its glorious 90s movie quality. What some may not know is the film was told to be cursed, and that was what led it to fail all across the board. Some of the minor stuff, apparently the script was rewritten over a dozen times, and it went through 3 or 4 different screenwriters, including Joss Whedon, who passed on it after the 7th or 8th rewrite. Then, the set had a copious amount of issues. Since it's all filmed on water, everything is bobbing around and the director describes it as a disaster from day one. Some of the set pieces sank. There was an issue with casting where people kept leaving the production, people kept getting hurt on set, one of the stuntmen was almost lost at sea. Not to mention, the film had an initial budget of $30 million. It rose to $175 million by the time filming was over. What? Just to give you an idea of the velocity of this number, let's take the Iron Man film from 2008. That film cost $140 million to make. What? And they have about 10 years in between them. It was supposed to only take less than 100 days to finish filming. It took 200 days of production. It was meant to compete on the level with films like Mad Max, though it was a decade or so too late. To say it's cursed might be a stretch, but I mean, come on, the evidence speaks for itself. Alright, I got a quick one here with Brainstorm from 1983. Natalie Wood was an actress for 40 years, most memorably known for her role in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean. Her last film was this film Brainstorm, who she starred side by side with Christopher Walken. Before production was finished, she had drowned in a tragic boating accident. The film came out in 83, but the accident happened in 81. The film was almost never released, but with some reshoots, they were able to finish it to honor her memory. It's considered cursed for this reason, and it's rightfully so. so, being that such a veteran actress had such a tragic demise while doing what she was known for. And I want to follow that one up with Rebel Without a Cause from 1955. As I had just mentioned, Natalie Wood was a lead in this film, but she wasn't the only reason to why this film has a curse attached to it. James Dean, considered to be an up-and-comer with nothing to lose, died in a car accident shortly after completing the filming. He was only 24 years old. Sal Mineo, another lead in the film, was killed by a mugger outside his house in 1976. Between this and the unfortunate death of Natalie Wood, it's hard to say whether or not calling this film curse is rubbish, but the proof is in the pudding. Alright, this one might be a bit of a stretch, but it does come up on lists, so Quantum Solace from 2008. I'm not a huge James Bond fan. I know it's popular enough to keep getting remakes and recasting the character. I believe between each different portrayal of the character through its numerous actors, only one was apparently riddled with enough issues to get the label of being cursed. This is that film. A few pieces of the case made for it to be labeled curse includes, but is not limited to, an unsuspected change in the director midway through production. Daniel Craig had apparently suffered an arm injury while filming, and a number of car accidents happened on set while filming. Again, I don't know much about James Bond movies, but you can't help to think something didn't want this film to get done. Alright, I got a pretty surprising one here. Passion of the Christ from 2004. Now, not talking about cursed films involving ghosts and demons, that's one thing, but it's odd to think that when you look up cursed films, a lot of people talk about this Mel Gibson hit. Not only was it extremely successful in the box office, in the background, some strange things had happened. Apparently, during the lashing scene, Jim Caviezel was hit a few times so hard it knocked the wind out of him. That's not so big. While carrying the cross, he dislocated his shoulder. I mean, that sucks, but no big deal. He was struck by lightning on set. Wait, what? Yes, you heard me. The guy playing Jesus was struck by lightning on the set of the Jesus movie. I don't even know what to say to that. And it isn't even the only time it happened. When it had happened to Caviezel, an assistant went to check on him. Moments later, that assistant was struck by lightning. The odds of 2 lightning strikes in succession like that in the exact same spot is astronomical. Not only that, this wasn't the first time this particular assistant was struck by lightning on set. If you thought the odds of one person getting struck by lightning directly next to and right after someone else was struck by lightning, the odds of one of them having been struck by lightning beforehand is pretty much impossible. But it happened here, so yeah, let's say this movie is cursed. Okay, so now this is an interesting one. A Confederacy of Dunces. The reason there's no year for this, it's because this movie was never made. This is based on a novel, and Hollywood has had the rights to it since the early 1980s. They've been trying to turn it into a movie, but every actor they've attached to the lead role has somehow perished. Some of the names that were attached to this film include John Belushi, John Candy, and Chris Farley. At some point, even Will Ferrell was somehow involved in the film, and as early as 2012, Zach Galifianakis was apparently also attached, but we haven't heard anything about it in a long time. So maybe it's safe to say that something doesn't want this book to get turned into a film. I don't know, but that's pretty strange. And leading off from that, The Incomparable Atuk. This was also supposed to be a film based on a novel about an Eskimo immigrating to New York. It has also not moved past the casting stage because, like with A Confederacy of Dunces, almost every actor attached to the main role has died. And I'll mention them again. John Belushi was supposed to do this film, so was John Candy, so was Chris Farley. But it goes even deeper with this one. Apparently, comedian Sam Kinison was also in line for the role. He had even done a couple of scenes before he had died in a tragic car accident. In 1994, John Candy had gone over the script with a friend of his, Michael Donahue. A few months after his heart attack, this guy also died of an unexpected cerebral hemorrhage. And now this is only some rumors that were going around, but apparently Phil Hartman was also in line to star in this film until he was murdered by his wife. It's crazy to think about films that have never even been done before because they're considered so cursed, they can't even move into filming or production of any kind. Alright, and really quick, I do have an honorable mention. Ghost from 1990. Okay, this might not be really considered a cursed tale. It doesn't really fall in line with any of the other films I've spoken about so far, but it is a story worth noting that I just discovered this doing my research, so if you haven't heard about this, I feel like sharing it with you. So apparently, there is an urban legend that follows the film Ghost, and it has since its film production. All of the crew members that were part of the production said that the set pieces were cursed. What were they cursed by? Well, they believe that Heather O'Rourke, the girl who was the child actress in Poltergeist who passed away, haunted the set. That's right. Apparently, Ghost was filmed on the same exact stage as movies Heather O'Rourke was in, being the Poltergeist films. Crew members have been quoted in saying that they've heard footsteps when nobody was supposed to be in those areas, and they've also heard child laughter when there are no children on set. There's a couple of creepy stories revolving around this, and it's worth looking into a little bit deeper if you want. Again, it is considered an urban legend. How much of it is true or not is left to be discovered, but it is an interesting story. Alright, well there you have it. Those are a couple of cursed films that you may or may not have known about. And if you want, you can look up some more that you probably never heard about. There's a ton of them in the horror movie genre, and I didn't even touch base on those today. And there's also more that I didn't even mention. But a lot of those I had never seen before, so I don't like commenting on stuff that I don't know about. But thank you guys for coming back to the channel. I really appreciate the support. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if any of this was interesting to you. Also, comment if you'd like me to do more videos like this. If you liked the video, please click like. I upload videos once a week. If you want to see them, the only way to do so is if you subscribe. So subscribe now if you haven't already. It's always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jesse, and if Flix could talk, here's what they would say.